Frenzy's here. It's brought to you by Wheaton Kia. Lynch, we'll get to you, but AJ has been waiting for a long time. You guys can intertwine on this interview. AJ Jakubec, the voice of the RedBlacks. There he is. How you doing, my man? AJ, long time no talk.
Yeah, doing great. Great to be with you. Bunny hug. When I'm hearing about bunny hugs, I'm just waiting to hear about Vico, and now I know I'm on a show in Saskatchewan.
Absolutely. We're changing the vernacular of this entire continent. Yeah. So, listen, John Lynch is going to chime in with his thoughts. What are yours, AJ, on Wednesday's news? Because you and I talked leading up to it. Now we got it. August 5th, Target kickoff. What's your read?
I'm positive. You know what? I just think the people that I talk to, for example, we had Mark Gowdy on this week, and I've talked to him, quite regularly through this process over the last couple of years.
Governor of the RedBlacks, by the way, just to tell people who he is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, president, CEO of the Ottawa Sports and Entertainment Group. So they run the RedBlacks, but also the Ottawa 67s. By the way, two teams. Is there another company in the world? It's not their fault, but I don't think there's another sports and entertainment company that has two teams that haven't played a game since the pandemic started. So I feel for them and the OHL season being canceled and all that kind of stuff. But when I talked to him last year, I never got any sense of optimism whatsoever that there was going to be a season. I never even got up to 50% optimism from him. And through this process this year, he's been very optimistic. And to me, it's twofold, right? I mean, when I talk about sports, I call sports people. When I talk about medical issues, I call doctors and that sort of thing, right? And there's just this sense, when you talk to people in the medical community that in 8 to 10 weeks, we're going to be in a much better spot, maybe where Israel is right now. So that's what gives me optimism that we're going to play this year. But let's see how it plays out.
Frenzy, yours, please.
What's the feeling of the fans there, Al, in Ottawa? Are they with the team? Are they care or giving up or what?
No, They care. You know what? The CFL, XFL stuff has been a story that, I host an afternoon drive show on TSN 1200 with Lever Sage. And, there's a lot of passion about this story. So I think people care. People want to see football. The people I talk to, and I think, it doesn't matter about CFL, XFL. It doesn't matter about, this year. They just want to be back at TD Place. They want to see football. They want to have a beer on the concourse with their buddies and, touchdowns, sacks, athletic plays, physicality, whatever that's, they want it this year in the form that the CFL is. And I think, a lot of them, not all of them, right? You're not going to get unanimity everywhere. But, a lot of these people that I talk to of all age groups just want to see football. They've seen it go away twice before, right? And in particular, the last time with the Renegades, I don't think anyone thought it was going to come back. So, a lot of these fans are very mindful of the fact that they just want to see 20 years down the road, the Ottawa RedBlacks play football.
Well, that's great. And now how about the other cities? Do you have any, Hamilton, I suppose, is pretty good, but what about Toronto and Montreal? We keep hearing that there's not really a lot of interest in those two cities.
Well, and that's the concern, right? You make calls across the country and like Toronto is Toronto. I don't think anyone's come up with any kind of plan to save the Toronto Argonauts. And I think that's probably where Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment is at right now. And so, but when you talk to people in Montreal and Vancouver as well, and people that are passionate about CFL football, that have a vested interest in it, I don't get a lot of optimism there that the status quo is going to work long term also. And so I think that's why we're in the position we're in. Look, like I understand the passion of the three down fans. Like I'm a football fan. Honestly, like 40 years, I grew up going to Commonwealth Stadium and seeing, the tail end of the dynasty years with Warren Moon and Jim Germany and Dave Fennell and Larry Highbaugh, Brian Kelly and that group, right? So I've been watching CFL football for 40 years, but I've been watching football.
Sounds like
for 40
me.
years, so I don't care about 3 down, 4 down, any of that kind of stuff. Like I just want football. I love the product, regardless. Like to me, it's not like the Hail Mary from Doug Flutie to Gerald Phelan in '84 Boston College Miami, I didn't turn off the TV that day and say, well, you know what, that would have been so much better if it was 3 down. And same with, Burris to Ellingson and the 89 Grey Cup. I didn't turn off the TV that day and say, well, you know what? Well, that game would have been so much better if it was 4 down. It's great. To me, the product is great on both sides of the border. And so, like, to me, I think you can work with that. The bigger thing is, like, I think there's a lot of people, even in the media, that are in denial about how much trouble these franchises are in the big markets. I talked to a former CFL executive recently about franchise values. I mean, Bill Daly in the NHL talked at length about protecting the asset. That's why they're playing. NHL teams, even with their broadcast revenue, they're losing a pile of money right now. But they're playing because they're protecting the asset. The Saskatchewan Roughriders. So I asked him, what are the Saskatchewan Roughriders? He's a guy that would know. And he said, well, probably over 100 million. Not sure the exact number, but certainly triple digits. What are the Ottawa RedBlacks worth? Well, depending pre-pandemic, post-pandemic, 15 million, maybe 35 million, somewhere in that range. Toronto Argonauts, what are they worth? $1. Montreal Alouettes, what are they worth? $1.
Yeah, less.
I didn't ask about the BC Lions. I didn't think I needed to ask about the BC Lions. Like this league needs a shot in the arm in those 3 cities. And to me, the status quo, when we're getting pretty good info here, from Dave Naylor, from yourself, Roddy, from people all across the country, you can connect the dots and say, these 3 franchises, the status quo isn't going to work. So if the status quo isn't going to work and the XFL goes and covets those markets, what do you do as the other 6 teams? What do you do if you're Craig Reynolds or Wade Miller or Mark Gowdy or Scott Mitchell? You just decide you're going to carry on with 6 teams and no Toronto, Montreal, and Vancouver while they try this new entity. So to me, I think, look, I don't want to sell out everything. The Grey Cup to me is a hill that I'll die on. 9 Canadian cities is a hill I'll die on. I think the Canadian players, need to be. I'm not necessarily saying the numbers need to be the same, but Canadian players, there has to be Canadian content in whatever this new league is. Beyond that, hey, there's going to be things I don't like. I'm not going to love the fact that there's no fall football. September and October, that's football season, right? So I don't love that. But if you get the right agreements in place beforehand, right? I don't want to see an announcement where they say, all right, we're merging. We're going to work on some things. No, I want to see an announcement that says, okay, we're merging. We got a 5-year broadcast deal that pays us a lot more than what we're getting right now. We've got a deal with Netflix or Amazon, kind of to do a games, but also maybe some sort of series, right? Like the F1 series that has drawn so many fans.
Yeah. I need to stop you there and get into some viewer comments. By the way, just because CFL XFL merger may play spring and summer doesn't mean we won't have university football to watch, and maybe we'll pack the stadiums that way across this country for junior and university football. Think about that. There's still that. Troy in Toronto watching. He says, I haven't heard a peep about the CFL XFL in Toronto and very little on... Where is it? Very little on Sports Center. It slipped off my... very little on Sports Talk. Larry Dye says, I would love to watch a Red Blacks game from the balcony of that apartment building. Larry's watching in Medicine Hat. You've been on the balcony of that apartment building in the end zone, have you not?
I have.
Having cocktails with the owner?
Because I'm always working.
Right. Well, it didn't have to be for a football game. Craig Campbell, Hockey Hall of Fame, downtown Toronto. Who's better? North side or south side? Always a good atmosphere there. What's better?
Yeah, love them both. I broadcast south side, so I'll go 51% that way just because I broadcast on that side.
From Paul Totsky in Toronto, I'm an Argos fan. Can't wait till they come back, but if the league becomes a 4-down league, I'll likely just watch the NFL or European soccer. Well, Paul, see ya. You'll be missing out. Can't convince you otherwise. From Beneath Sports Twitter feed, watching in Toronto, says Damon Allen said on Fan 590 the CFL needs to pour their resources into youth sports and grassroots football in Canada. Do you agree this will help grow the league, AJ?
Yeah, that would help. But again, I think it's broadcast, right? And, I think they got a pretty good broadcast deal in Canada, but what more can you get out of that broadcast deal? You can get a heck of a lot more if you bring in not just, American TV networks, but what about Amazon, right? What if you have a special and you have games, right? They're getting into the NFL business. So, and again, I think the other two, like EA Sports, right? Or like, let's be honest, if you're going to a meeting with EA Sports or Caesars or Amazon or Netflix or Fox or ESPN or whoever, you have a better chance of getting video game deal, a gambling deal, a fantasy deal, whatever, broadcast with The Rock. Like that's where The Rock, that's where just his presence makes a factor. I don't expect that, all of a sudden 35,000 people a game are going to go to watch football in Houston just because The Rock is involved. No, it's about the doors that he can open, right? And if you go with The Rock, Larry Tannenbaum, Jerry Cardinal, and Danny Garcia, I think some of those doors that maybe wouldn't be open otherwise can start to open.
Hey, before we let you go, because we're running out of time, tell me a little bit about the OHL. What are you hearing? You're very connected. You've called 67s games for years. They're talking about a prospects tournament, I'm sure you've heard. Do you know how these kids are going to get on the ice, the draft eligibles at least, ahead of the NHL draft?
Yeah, I mean, they're talking about that. I haven't heard anything in a couple of days, to be honest. I talked to a lot of people on the day of the cancellation. I just feel for these kids, right? I mean, I think, for the draft eligibles, there's guys that, like I look at a guy like Alex Formenton. Alex Formenton looks great right now with the Ottawa Senators on the penalty kill. He's one of the fastest guys in the NHL. And, this is a guy that in his draft year with the London Knights as a 16-year-old, because it's a 1 year later in the OHL than the WHL, was 5'6". And so didn't play in the league at 16, all of a sudden played at 17, was a second-round draft pick and just shot up from there, World Juniors, all that kind of stuff. So how many of these guys, and look, if you're good, maybe it's a year away before these guys get looked at. But I just feel for so many kids that just didn't get the opportunity to skate. Like it's, back to OSEG and their situation, like the biggest revenue-generating league in the world that hasn't played a game since the pandemic, the Canadian Football League. Meantime, the best hockey league in the world that hasn't played a game is the Ontario Hockey League. And it's not, the OHL thing, I mean, there's a lot involved. I don't think it's on the individual clubs. Not going to get in any of that kind of stuff. But I just feel for, the staff, people that have a vested interest in it, and mainly the players, right? Just the fact that, they're going to be, I don't think you're going to see a lot of 5th and 6th round draft picks. Maybe I'm going to be wrong. Maybe they take a flyer on some of these kids. But I feel for those kids.
So do I. We'll find out draft weekend of the National Hockey League. And I wish we had more time, but we are out of it. AJ, always enjoy our visits. The viewers loved it. Stay safe, my friend. And you two didn't get in a fight, so today's a win.
Good seeing you again, AJ.
Love you, Frenzy.
I know. There's a lot of passion there with you guys. Okay, thanks, AJ. Have a great weekend.
You're watching Rod Pedersen On Demand. For more of The Rod Pedersen Show, visit rodpedersen.com or follow Rod Pedersen on social media.